All right, so hi class, Brother James, Team 7. So this is my journal report, and I was trying to write it out, and I'm just feeling under the weather tonight, and I saw the option to do a video, so I thought that might be something I could do, just more speaking from my personal experiences this semester than rather than trying to write them down. I'm just not as good with composition, so play to your strengths, right? So when I signed up for this course, I there were some parallels going on at work. A few of the guys had gone off to a meeting with multiple counties here in California to discuss how they were going to approach moving into the world of mobile applications, and what types of functions could be offered. And the reason they met a group of counties like that was because they didn't want to all spin their own wheels trying to do the same thing in different counties, when they could perhaps pool their efforts and create something that would be for the public good, that would be able to be quickly and easily adapted to each of the counties individually. So I commend them for having that kind of foresight and teamwork. And so I recognized that our department was going to be kind of moving in the direction of putting human resources towards that type of effort, mobile application development. And so I thought, great, this is coming at a perfect time to get in here and learn, how to do this platform independent code, and then how to get it to, work on an Apple device or on an Android, how to tie into the technologies. I think I was expecting more of the class than what I ended up discovering it was. And that's okay. I just had to adjust my expectations. However, there is still, I think, a bit of residual disappointment that I didn't get the opportunity to learn how to write code that would access the geolocation or camera or microphone of a mobile device. Perhaps there's a class down the road that'll teach me that stuff, or I'll just have to jump in with the team and learn how to do it at work. But there were some definitely valuable things that came out of this, some things that solidified knowledge that I had kind of a cursory understanding of, as well as topics that I knew in theory but didn't know execution-wise. And I'll echo the sentiments that some other students I know have said about not being able to use libraries or frameworks like jQuery. I appreciate the opportunity that Brother James presented to us to use Bootstrap for at least our styling, although we didn't use it for any of the transitions, animations, or transformations. That was strictly on our own, as requested by Brother James. So and I think the reason I was disappointed that that wasn't a part of the class was because in 160 we learned these JavaScript basics, and in 230 we learned front-end web development, making a website that looks good not only on a monitor but also down on a smaller device and has some of that functionality. And while I understand that the idea here was to expand the use of our JavaScript to create something more than just a website, but a functional application, I feel like if we had spent the first 4 weeks or 6 weeks learning how to do it the old JavaScript way, then being given the green light to go ahead and include jQuery in our app could have given us that extra boost to create something a little more just a little more fluid, a little more simpler code, not having to write out these functions to handle something that jQuery can handle in a couple of lines. And I understand the need to know the basics first, and then you build on that. But but it still feels like each class I've taken up till now is touching the basics on, whether it's PHP or it's MySQL or it's JavaScript or it's, this mobile app development class. They're all touching on the basics and saying, oh, it's not quite go back and learn assembly code, but it's stay within these limits. When if we can demonstrate our understanding of that, we'll move forward and expand and do more, I think would be beneficial. I feel like I'm critiquing the class too much and not talking so much about my learning. So I ended up, I think, setting a few stumbling blocks for myself this semester. It was a really tough moment where I had to make a realization during the development process that I was spinning my wheels on something. Again, out of my frustration of not being able to use frameworks, I was trying to create something that's like Mustache or Handlebars or Pure.js, these JavaScript libraries that allow you to do kind of on-the-fly front-end DOM manipulation. Because I was having trouble with my AJAX calls. I was making calls to HTML documents on our server, and they'd get injected, but then I couldn't target any of the elements because of the asynchronous nature of AJAX. The following scripts, no matter what order I put it in or how, even if I tried, I was trying to use set timeouts or other stuff, I just couldn't get it to wait long enough until those elements were injected so that I could target them and fill them with data, apply styles or animations to them. So it just began to become a frustration for me. And so I think out of my own desire to have access to those libraries, like we mentioned, I went out there and I tried to write a Mustache Lite, and I've got just a snippet here of it. And it did take me a while to get this to work the way I wanted it, but it's not even that many lines of code. It's really maybe 30 lines of code or something here, and half of it's comments. Basically what it would do is just go through and actually using handlebar type syntax in my HTML, I would do something to the effect of like an H1 welcome. Well, let's do that. Welcome. And then right here, I would just do like this. And this is something you'll see with either Mustache or Handlebars. They use this similar syntax. And I would do, like user dot first name. And it wasn't this generic, but it was something to this effect. And then, same thing. User dot last name. And I'd close off the H1. And so when the HTML was ready, when it came back from the AJAX call, I'd actually just pass it through this build page function, and it would go through and it would remove this stuff and replace it with, Logan Mitchell. And then it would return, when it was done, it would return that string, that HTML string, and that string would be what was passed into the inner HTML of the element, after, right there in the AJAX call. So I actually was injecting the data prior to inserting it as HTML to the inner HTML of the element. Unfortunately, this didn't become very scalable. I wasn't able to use it once our app got more complicated. And so I had a frank meeting with my class, or not my class, my team, and we sat there and we discussed it. And this was in week 2 of development, end of week 2. So we were just starting week 3. And I was like, what do we do? Do I spend more of my time trying to do this, and you guys are kind of halted on doing anything until I'm done with it? Or do we sit there and try to figure out another way to do it? And this is where another, I think, reflection comes in for me, which was when you don't know the answer and when your team doesn't know the answer, it's a good thing. It's imperative to find another source for the information. And my Google searches and other research online weren't turning anything up, and I figured, let me turn to the team or to the class. And so I just put my stuff out there. Said, anybody having trouble with this? Anybody doing this similar type of structure and having trouble getting this information to display. And Daniel Lovell got back to me. One other student got back to me, but we were not talking the same language. She was referring to something else, and we quickly sorted that out. But Daniel Lovell had done a lot of research on callbacks, and I was vaguely familiar with callbacks. I've seen them used, but I really didn't kind of understand the meat and potatoes of them. And so so he kind of gave me some pointers, and he gave me some resources to go look at, and I tried some things on my own, and eventually I got it to work with the callbacks. And you know, I don't know that it's the cleanest code ever, but it works. And our animations apply, or not animations, but our transitions apply when the pages are loaded. The content gets updated appropriately. So that was like a big victory for us. And from then on, we just kind of tried to crank out our pages and get the app done. And we got as close as we could in the time we were given. And that was, I don't know, another perhaps frustration of mine that ended up being a bit of a revelation was being given both the, I don't want to say archaic, but the basic way to, you know, requirements to do these things using, you know, these just pure JavaScript and the CSS, you know, all hand coded and stuff like that. Being given that and research that for 8 weeks, and then being given only 4 weeks for complete development of an application, especially when you've got varying experience levels. And it just seemed to me like it was like, well, this is really frustrating. And then I began to think about how some of the things are going at my place of employment at the county. And we're in the process right now, and I'm part of this project actually, to migrate our property tax system off of mainframe technology and off of hand-spun mainframe applications that were written in the late 70s and early 80s, and have been relatively maintained since then. And we're moving off to a .NET Micro Focus COBOL and you know, server environment there. And so it's a lot different, and there's been a lot of problems, but you know, one of the things that's remaining true is that we're sticking with COBOL. It's just a .NET version of COBOL. And so sometimes you are not in control of the requirements of how a project's going to be done. You are given you know, coding languages and standards to write to and things like that, and you may think of a better, you know, more effective way to do it, or think that there might be a better way. And there's nothing wrong with bringing that up and saying it, but the ultimate decision comes down to the project manager or the director or whoever is in charge of the project, and says, you know, no, this is how we're doing it, and you've got 6 months to crank this out. And you know, we've been working on the property tax thing a lot longer than that, but that was the other thing with the development time. You also don't always have control over the timeline. Yeah, you may be a vendor that's being contracted for some company to build something, or you may be the organization itself that is, you know, creating something. But they could say, you know, we need this before the end of the year, and you're like, well, that's impossible. I guess I'm going to be, you know, working 80-hour weeks or whatever until this is done. And I didn't always have that option of throwing more time at it. You know, this is a class for school, and I do have a full-time job, and I've got the kids, and you know, all sorts of other things going on. So, you know, devoted as much time to it as we could, and we did not. I was, you know, I feel like we didn't meet the deadline. Like, we didn't provide a functioning product, you know, version 1.0, even if it did just the most basic things. Instead, you know, we were still trying to eat the entire elephant. And you know, we got a lot of things that look good, but we didn't, you know, most other teams had something on, you know, well, on Saturday or after that works start to finish. It does one thing well, and ours doesn't. So, you know, I may be being too hard on myself. You know, I'm proud of the things I learned. I'm proud of the things we did as a team. I'm proud of the way the app looks. I'm proud of the way it, you know, functions and some of the other frameworks we got going on there. But I do feel like I let myself down a little bit that we didn't finish the app, and so I do plan on finishing it at some point. But but this was definitely a good semester, and despite my stubbornness and my opinions on certain things and how they should be done, uh, I get that there's things to be learned out of how this class was structured, and being told use this language and do it in this time. Um, yeah, so I'm really grateful for this class. I'm grateful for my team, for Mike Roberts and Will Nelson, who both also put a ton of time and effort into this and trying to learn it. And I know they were coming from different levels of experience, and I appreciate their efforts. I appreciate the class, any of those who chimed in and responded to my stuff, anybody who put questions out there that I could help them with. I was grateful for that opportunity to be able to help. I wish you all luck in your future coding endeavors, and you have my email, or if you don't, it's lmitchell80@gmail.com. Feel free to email me. I may see some of you in future classes, and I wish you the best of luck.